just wait for the slide. So basically, can you all hear me? Okay. So basically, I'm just gonna be just starting. Basically, I mean the call people like Dr. Rotimi and our sister Tyre, who's got the experience, work experience, would probably be giving us more insight into how to transition from the academic to work. Because I know that even as much as a lot of us come for academic, as much as a lot of us are here because of academic and stuff like that, but what we're really concerned about or what we're really keen about is life after studies. So I think that that would be more. Everything is relevant, but that would be more impacting when we hear the life stories and the transition as well. So what I'm just going to be doing is just kind looking at the getting the best out of your academic life. How many of us are students that have just started? One, two, three, almost done. Okay, so we have about four that have just started September. Oh, okay, because I've been seeing your face. Okay, okay. Masters, PhD, masters, masters. Okay, all right. So I think maybe I might be speaking to you guys at this stage. So I'm just going to be going through getting the best out of academic. Most people should be RGU, University of Aberdeen. I would imagine RGU, RGU, RGU. Okay. So I might be looking at the principle as opposed to the exact situation because I'm not a lecturer at RGU, but University of Aberdeen. But it's pretty much similar, yeah, because at least I've done from. So my background is I did my master's at the University of Glasgow, did a PhD at University of Manchester, worked at Liverpool John Moss University, worked at Edinburgh Napier, and now University of Aberdeen. So pretty much similar stories when you think about the progress or the movement. So, in terms of thinking about getting the best, what I'm going to be talking about today is some key points that I've kind of like highlighted through my working with students and some of the things I know that students kind of like struggle with. Especially thinking of what Sheun said, it's not like the system is difficult when you think about the academic environment. I almost feel like most of us came from Nigeria, if I'm not wrong. I feel we have a more tedious academic environment in Nigeria compared to the UK. I wouldn't say so much with the US because I mean, in terms of looking at my colleagues who've done PhD in the US and myself here, they're quite rigorous, to be honest. But I think what it is it's basically trying to understand the system and how it works, and then getting yourself into that process that seems to be the challenge. So some of the things I've just kind of like highlighted to talk about is dealing with culture shock, isolation. So what I notice is that most students, foreign students, when they come in, one of the challenges they have is that they kind of isolate themselves. So we don't tend to want to mix up with other people, especially if you're in a class or a cohort where you don't have people that are like you. You find out that you struggle with that. And then in terms of thinking about assessment and coursework, and then obviously employability, like I said, most of the time we're not just thinking about our studies, but we're thinking about life after that. How are we going to get a job? What are we going to do? And then some things to just be aware of. In terms of thinking about dealing with culture shock and isolation, one of the things I've noticed with students is that when you come into a new environment, especially an academic environment where things are different from what you've been used to, it's always good to kind of build some form of network or community. So try not to keep yourself away from people. Another thing we do, so can I just be like Nigerian? Because a lot of us are Nigerian. I know we're recording it, but I mean, another thing we do as Nigerians, I don't know if it's the same with Africans, is that we're quite competitive when it comes to our studies. So you find out that you really don't want to share information, because you just feel like the small I know or what I know, I want to know more than the other person. So let me get from the person and not necessarily share what I have. That doesn't really help. As much as even in this environment right now, what we encourage students to do is have conversations, have discussions, not necessarily share your work. So when it comes to doing assessments, for example, we're not saying you should share the assessment in terms of give your script to somebody else, because then someone else is going to be talking about plagiarism. That's that's going to be picked up as plagiarism, and it could also be have its consequences. But what is expected is that you should be able to have conversations. You should be able to discuss. What I tell students when I teach, like especially in post 90 universities, I tell them what's the difference between this post 90 university and universities like the University of Oxford or Cambridge, is that those universities really build on network. It's not so much about coming for just an academic degree. It's about who you meet in the room. It's about how you network with the people in the room. It's about how you build that collaboration. Because once you leave that room, those are the people that you're going to be having business negotiations with. So that's what makes Oxford and Cambridge, because they really emphasize on that. So what I tell students is, don't think about the fact that I'm just here to get a degree. Think about, how do I get to know the person sitting next to me? What do they do? How can I collaborate with them? Especially if you're in the business school. I teach in the business school. So for me, the business school is really a place where you get to meet people, where you get to build business ideas, where you get to build business connections as well. So for me, it's very important that you think about networking. Don't isolate yourself as a student. Beyond the classroom, I also tell people, I mean, Creed is an excellent platform for everyone who's a student. I mean, that's why we're here now. We're getting information. We're being, we're getting information. We're getting the knowledge that we need. Try to look at communities beyond the academic environment that could help you. I've met a few students that when they see me, for example, they're excited. Oh, someone is Black African, and then they come up to me and like, oh, sorry, where are you from? Are you Nigerian? And then you hear their stories of, oh, I really don't know anyone. I've not really mixed up with people and things like that. And that's because they've kind of just isolated themselves to the classroom and to the people there. I know sometimes it could be difficult if you come into a city and you don't really know anybody. I remember when I was doing my master's at the University of Glasgow, I think it was maybe I arrived on a Sunday or Monday, I can't remember. But within that week, I was working from the where I stayed to school, and I literally had someone kind of like, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, and she was literally running after me, and I was like, what's going on? I didn't know her. She was just excited to see another Black person. And today we're like 5 and 6. I mean, this is how many years later. But it was just that excitement of, oh, wow, there's somebody else I don't know in a city that I don't really know people. And then that's how she was doing economics. I was in the management, but we're obviously in the business school. And that's how we kind of like just hit it off. And then somehow over time as well, we started getting to know other people. And then we started building network that after what we used to do was that every weekend, maybe after church or something, we'll just choose someone's house to hang out, and that was us building a community. And then we always used to share information. Like I said, she was in economics, I was in management. We knew somebody else that was in engineering, but we just had that community. I think we're, even as Africans, I think we're quite good at that. That you don't necessarily have to know the person, and once you just see the person automatically becomes your brother and sister in that community. So I think it's something that we should keep. It's very good. Try not to be overly competitive. I know we live in a competitive world, but also understand that there's also collaboration as well. So think about how you can also benefit from someone, and how you can also ensure that they benefit from you as well. And that's basically around networking and just going beyond your silos and not just isolating yourself. It helps for your mental health as well. It's not just about helping you in terms of your career, but I think it really does help for your mental health. So it's something that I would encourage, especially for the new students that haven't really mixed up. Try to, as much as possible. I know some of you haven't come alone, you might have come with family. Also try to see how you can engage with other people using the church platform, because I mean, we're all here. We somehow have a connection with the church using the church platform and the universities as well. It's quite interesting. I found out that University of Aberdeen do a lot when it comes to networking and when it comes to helping students kind of like assimilate into the environment. So we just rounded up induction and before we started, and being part of the student engagement team, it was quite interesting to see the level of work that is being done when you have to put up a program for students at every level, and just encouraging them to engage, encouraging them to network, encouraging them to meet other people beyond the African community. So it's, in as much as I'm saying networking, use the church platform and things like that, also think about other people. Don't stick to well, I'm Nigerian, I just want to have Nigerian friends, or I'm Nigerian, I just want to have African friends. No, meet people that are from China, meet people that are from the Middle East, meet people that are from the US. You'll be quite amazed at how you can actually share information and grow beyond the academic environment by just meeting and talking with people as well. So that's something I would really encourage that we do. In terms of assessment, I think this is also very important and key because I find that a lot of students struggle with this. Now, I think when I was doing my own master's, it wasn't so it wasn't so obvious or compulsory with regards to attendance taking and then connecting or linking that to home office. But I think that's something that is quite it's the norm now, like your attendance is linked to. And what I noticed as a lecturer is that a lot of students still try to find a way around that. But what I tell people is that I don't know about RGU, but I know University of Aberdeen is quite strict around attendance. So what happens is that if you're expected to, let's say you have 10 weeks and you miss 2 weeks, what happens is that they give you a warning just to find out, are you okay? They call it checking up on you, but obviously it's also like a warning to say, okay, home office expects that you should be attending classes, and we haven't heard anything saying that you've fallen on the streets, you're in the hospital, so what's going on? And if there's no response, they give you something called like a C6. I don't know how it is in RGU, but what that does is that you get flagged up. And if you still don't respond, your name gets passed on to home office. So what I advise students is as much as possible attend, try to take the attendance. Where you feel like you're not able to because you're ill or something has come up, let the lecturer know, let whoever is in charge know. Because what that does is that it's actually flagged up on your record, and then they don't have to push that to home office. I've seen a few cases where, I mean, people pay a lot of money to come and study. And I've seen a few cases where if you're flagged up and it gets to the home office, there's a conversation around that. And what happens is, even if the university says, well, okay, you missed some lectures, you've missed an assessment, you can write the assessment, you might not be within the window of your visa. So what happens is that you have to leave the country and do that remotely. Or in some instances, you just get a visiting visa and come and do it. But I mean, most of us, or most people who come, like I said, you're thinking about employability, life after your studies. So I would imagine that you're not trying to cut short your visa because you want that to count towards your stay if you're planning to stay in the UK. So those are some things I think that students need to pay attention about. In terms of the assessments, I think people need to, one of the challenges I've seen is that people struggle with understanding the assessment, what the question is. And that's where, in terms of looking at the difference, it's not that the question is too difficult. It's just that sometimes we don't understand what is really expected of us. And like I said, I feel it's so much easier here. I'm not sure, thinking back, I know it's really been a long time, but I can't ever remember studying in Nigeria where the lecturer would give you the assessment right from the beginning and give you the criteria for the marking of that assessment. That's literally like Expo. What I mean is that it makes it easy for you to map out if I need to answer 5 points. So like a lecturer, that's what I do. If I'm giving you a question, I would identify in this question, you have to answer 5 points. And I would actually state out the 5 points that you need to answer. And we'll tell you what the grades are. If you answer the first point, 10 points, the second point, 30 points. So it's easy to use that as a map to answer the questions that needs to be answered. But I think sometimes people don't really pay attention to that detail, and that's where they struggle. So I would say for students, it's always good to understand the assessment, understand the question, understand what is required. And where you don't have that understanding, ask questions. I mean, across all the universities I've worked at, there's no university or there's no lecturer that would not respond to your questions. The only thing I know people do is to avoid having to repeat the same questions or answering the same questions over and over again. They kind of create like a discussion board where they expect you to drop the question so that everyone can see the question. In case that's a question that you probably need, but you haven't asked it, you have access to it. So I think it's always important that we take advantage of such things. Ask questions. Again, like I said, meet your submission timelines. When you have to submit the deadlines, try to meet it. some people are not as strict as, but over the years, I've figured out that most universities, most lecturers are very strict with late submissions. Once you submit late, you lose marks. So you don't want to be losing marks for, in quote, unnecessary things. If you feel you can't meet the deadline, ask for extension. It's not illegal. Lecturers would give you, especially where you have a valid reason or there's evidence to which you show why you need that extension. So try to take advantage of that as well. Plagiarism and the use of AI. I'm not going to dwell on that because I know that Dr. Mela is going to be talking about that. But I would say it's very, very important, especially now with the whole drive with AI. It's quite interesting how even the universities are also trying to clamp down on the use of AI. Interestingly, I went for an induction where someone was looking at, I don't call it right. Is it chat GBT? Did I get it? G, GPT. See, I said GBT. GPT, GTB Bank. GPT, yes, Chat GPT. Interestingly, I was at an event where the library lady was looking through Chat GPT, I got it right, was going through it and was trying to say it's very good with English. It's exceptional, and the speed at which it gives information. But do you know the information is actually wrong? Like she literally went through an academic piece and then looked at the referencing. It was amazing how it juggled up the reference. Like someone who had written a book in like 1940 something, it actually put it up at 2017 or something. It was a lot. So I was like, wow, so that's an easy way of clamping down on students that use that without really checking it. And sometimes, again, a few cases that I've seen that have used that is that especially when it's, okay, they know you come in as a student, you do a first assessment, and then you do an assessment, and then the language is just not your language. They just feel this is slightly higher than what a student at this level would produce. When you're not doing a PhD, you're doing a master's, and then you don't really use the jargon. Because normally what some lecturers do is that you have the formative and the summative assessments. And then some of the assessments, the reflective piece of writing that you do in class. So they kind of map that to what you submitted. And they see this is very advanced, you know. So those are some ways through which they actually pick out and identify where you do that. So I'm not going to dwell on that because Dr. Amela is going to be talking about that. But I would say be cautious about it and know how you apply such technology for your assessments. Employability. I think this is where a lot of people are very keen with regards to after academic, especially if you're doing a master's. A master's is just 1 year and it goes really fast. So I think from my experience, what I would advise students to do is right from the get-go, start thinking about your pathway in terms of employability. I think the universities do a lot. Now we have a lot of external platforms. We have the LinkedIn, we have things like Creed, but I think the universities do a lot with regards to information around careers. For example, like I said, we've just rounded up induction at the University of Aberdeen, and I was quite amazed at what the career service actually do, the level of support they provide for students. And you'll be shocked that a lot of us students, especially students that are not from here, that are not locals, don't use those services. We literally don't use it. And it's so good. I remember using it when I was at the University of Glasgow, and it was really good. We had a session where it was about submitting our CVs, and they went through the CVs and taught us how to write CVs and taught us how to write different types of CVs. So I feel like it's something that we need to use, especially when we start thinking about employability and our life after our academic journey. There's so much around. I remember going through the University of Aberdeen career site, Career Connect or so they call it. They have, if you want to check for jobs, current jobs, there are lots of jobs. One of the inductions I went for, the career lady just literally typed in a word and over 2,000 jobs came out. Now, the difference in terms of, so you have the jobs for internship and then graduate jobs. So those ones are jobs that if you want to start next year, October, you should be applying now. So that one is something that works for, especially for undergrad students. But if you're thinking about, if you've got experience and you're thinking about applying for jobs, most of the jobs tend to take you almost immediately. So at this point, you might not be necessarily applying for the jobs, because what it is that they will be saying, oh, well, when are you ready to start? 1 month notice and stuff, but you're just starting your master's. So you're not necessarily ready to take the jobs. But it's always good to look at those jobs, look at some of the requirements, and see how you can kind of like align yourself to those jobs. Another thing the career service actually does is that they actually provide interview sessions. So they don't only look at your CVs, but if you actually do have an interview session to attend, they could do a mock for you. And that's so good to help you. In fact, they even have an AI system that can actually do a mock interview preparation to just teach you how to do presentation, and where you're wrong, it would actually tell you and highlight, you should be answering like this, you should do it like this, you should do it like this. So I think as students, we should take advantage. You paid a lot of money to come and study. Take advantage of it and use those things, because it's very important. You have events, lots of events happening, even in the city. I mean, there are lots of career fairs. University of Aberdeen, I know in October we have employability, we have career fairs. Some companies organize stuff that they inform the careers office, and they kind of like let students know. So that's University of Aberdeen, and I believe it's pretty much the same at RGU. So what I would say again, going back to the first point I highlighted, don't isolate yourself. Don't isolate yourself to just your studies as well. Try to look up what's happening. And sometimes I know it could be really difficult, especially when you're thinking about recognizing your real life issues, especially when you have family, when you're juggling, managing the kids, work, bills, and things like that. It could be really tough. But at the same time, I would say it's really around how you prioritize your time and your activities. And that's why it's very important to actually build connections. Because if you build connections with people in the society, for example, in the university, in the church, for example, you might find people who are also new students who also have family. And you could also kind of share your time and say, well, if you're available today, or if you're available this week and I'm not available, let's have the kids while you go do what you have to do, and then do vice versa. So it's something that you need, that network. You can't do it all by yourself, especially the way the world is now. I mean, for example, those of us who came in and were single, it was quite easy to manage yourself and manage your time. Like, I did a lot of stuff when I was a student. I volunteered for free. I didn't necessarily get paid for what I was doing, but that gave that opportunity. For some people, it might be very difficult because you literally want your time. Every single time matters, and you want value for your time. So you want to be able to work to earn money to pay your bills. So I think it's something to really think about how to manage, recognize your issues, think about how to manage it, and see how you can align it to the events that you have to do around your work, around your academic as well. Then some other things I'd like to highlight around as a student is be aware of your visa related information. Now I know that back then the home office or the universities were not so strict with regards to how many hours you work, but now I think it's 20 hours for students, and some people tend to extend that sometimes. I think you have to be aware of some of the implications and consequences around that. So I would say be aware of it, work related information. Even as a student, there's some volunteering roles that are not, you can't do. Apparently, home office, the way home office has classed it, it's illegal to do it. So it's good to find out what is actually classed or categorized as volunteer, and how you can do it, and how that does not impact on your visa as well. So I think those are some things that you need to kind of like be aware of. So I just highlighted that. And learning beyond the classroom, I kind of like the Asians, specifically the Chinese, what they do when they come to study. They don't just kind of like study, focus on their academic study. They literally study the city. They literally study the town. In fact, I think one of the times I was having a conversation with them at the University of Manchester, and we're like, oh yeah, they actually tell them before they leave that when you go around, go to other cities, see what's happening, see how they do things, look at their supply chain, look at their businesses. So it's part of their learning experience as well. Whatever the motive is, that's really not the issue. It's about the opportunity to learn beyond the classroom. So I think it's something that we could also do. It's not so much so about the expense. So for example, in Aberdeen, how many people have actually gone to the museums in Aberdeen? Yeah, it seems like the old hands. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's something that you need to. I think there's one that's not too far. Yeah, near Pure. Is it Pure Dream or so? Maritime, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it's not really all about the cash, really. Aberdeen is a small town. It's not as small as Liverpool. I know when I went to Liverpool, they told me like I could literally walk around the town in 20 minutes. I don't know how true that is. I didn't try it. But I mean, you can really get around even in Aberdeen as well. So try to explore and then go beyond the city where you can and when you can. So I think then in terms of some of the links I just kind of put up there, you have LinkedIn that you could check for information. Aberdeen Council, Aberdeenshire Council. Interestingly, I don't know how many of you actually heard about the opening of the seaport. Yeah, I kind of stumbled on it as well. I think I was looking through my window in the office, and then I saw a sheep, and I was like, "Wow!" And then my colleague director was like, "Yeah, apparently they're going to be opening," and that was how I knew about it. So I think getting information is really key because you know about things that are happening in the city. So Aberdeenshire Council, societies like the Student Union, faculty department societies as well, passportbeyondborders.com. That's also something that is part of one of us here. She's not here actually at the moment, but has started that. And I think it's really important to actually look at it because it actually helps with you acclimatizing with your environment. It's also like a platform to enable people. Yeah, someone's actually pointing at. Really, those platforms are really good to actually be part of, and then obviously Creed, and that is why we're here today. So that's gonna be me for today. I just felt like I should share that information, and thank you.